one of India's favorite retail stores, our favorite as we've grown up, and the country's favorite store. And we're very excited to be talking to you because Fab India to us is India, and it has defined in many ways our shopping experiences. And for most of us, today I am wearing Fab India, but you will not be able to see in this Zoom call. And we're very excited to be talking to you because what you've built is a phenomenal story. What you've built is a phenomenal brand for this country. But what we want to ask you, William, today is that it is a tough time for India. It is the tough time for the world, but more so in your space, in your sector, retail has been badly, very, very badly hit. What has it meant for you? What has it meant for Fab India, Organic India, and what does it mean for the sector?
I think, Shraddha, what you said is that it's hit everybody across the world. I mean, I think this is the first event where everybody feels it. I don't think there's ever been an event in human history where everybody has felt the same event. When 9/11 happened, the people of New York felt it much more than people in other places. When other events happen, tragedies happen, you felt it in one part of the world. But this has been an event that everybody, every business person, every entrepreneur, everybody has a direct experience of what happened. And some industries, as you said, have been really badly hit. Retail is one of them, and retail is, I think that the lesson for us all is that you can take nothing for granted. And you have to be very, at this time, for entrepreneurs like us and for people across practically every industry, you have to be super alert to the changing needs of customers, what's happening. And I think there are a couple of very clear mega trends that are emerging in this. And I think it's those who are not going to be hyper vigilant and sensitive to what's changing are risk, losing whatever they've created. And it's a terrible moment. I've had friends lose businesses that they've taken 20, 25, 30 years to build. And you don't feel, you feel such a sense of loss for them, to see that something that they have built, they've spent their life on. Somebody was telling me recently, they said, I've spent my whole life work on this and I've seen it disappear in front of my very eyes. And I think those things are very tragic and very moving. And they're also a reminder to all the other entrepreneurs that, look, this is a very, very powerful moment of change. And you've got to understand it if you're going to survive it.
Yeah, yeah. William, for you, the lockdown meant complete shutdown, right? Like the Fab India stores were shut down, and at least now today I saw while I was crossing that Fab India here in Bangalore in Indranagar is open. What has this lockdown meant for your business in particular?
When the stores shut down, it happened, as you're all aware, with very little warning. So it took, I think the first 2 weeks was just getting over the shock of understanding what had happened and what this landscape was going to look like. Then we were quick to see that, okay, the governments have allowed selling of essential food, hygiene products. So we had a small food business and a small hygiene products business, and of course, Organic India, which is food and supplements for health. So we quickly ramped those up. And, I must say, this is where teamwork, and this is where, where you feel that collaboration, teamwork. Our teams in UP were able to work with the government. The state government was incredibly supportive and helpful. We were able to get the factory up and running very quickly. And, because it was producing food and supplements, in Fab India, we ramped up the sale of food and products. So that was the first, and after the first 2 weeks, we were able to do that. And, food, which had traditionally been in hygiene products, 2% or 3% of our business, grew to be about 15 to 20% of our business. And I think the other thing that almost every entrepreneur had to do, Shraddha, was conserve cash. And, when you apply the brakes, imagine you're driving down the road at 80 kilometers and you hit the brakes. I told someone, I said, it's never going to be an easy thing. A car traveling at 80 where you jam. I was once in a car where someone had to jam on the brakes, and it was horrible. Everybody was thrown around, and that's what we had to do with cash. Every entrepreneur had to just step on the brake as hard as they could. And the problem is that that sends the car spinning. I mean, it's never anything when you're going quite fast. And you have to, I mean, I have had friends whose businesses were reliant on investor funding. And, you know, some of their investors gave them a round of funding and some didn't. And those who didn't are facing a horrible choice today. Some investors did do follow-on rounds in the period immediately after. But, you know, all said and done, the sudden lack of cash in the system, and this was not only in India, it's a global phenomenon. And, you know, I think that there the RBI really helped out by trying to push banks to lend to businesses to help them stay afloat. But in spite of that, you know, it's been an incredibly challenging time. So our first reaction was during the first 2 weeks, all we did was try to conserve cash. So we were able to, fortunately, we got a lot of support from our bankers. They helped us out. We put a war chest together because we estimated that we would need cash till at least December. And I think in hindsight, that was a good move. And for entrepreneurs who, you know, we have small groups that we talk amongst each other, you know, I think I was one of the few people who was saying that, look, make sure you can collect as much cash now as you can, because you don't know where the next, you know, when the cash cycle is going to begin. Yeah. But the good news is it is beginning, and you can see green shoots coming up all over in the economy. I think that's a really positive sign.
Yeah. You know, William, you are a very, and I know you, and you are a very strong supporter of artisans, rural Indian micro entrepreneurs, if I may say so. And Fab India is a story where you've supported so many artisans from across the country. But in the last 2 years, what did it mean for your 60,000 plus artisans and workforce?
You know, it's been a heartbreaking time for them. I mean, there's no, you know, because as you said, when you hit the brakes suddenly, everybody in the car gets thrown. And in fact, the lower you are in the economic pyramid, the harder the effects that were felt. And, you know, it's been just, I mean, there've been some amazing stories of people who've really gone out and helped. We realized that the best thing we could do to help was to try to clear all invoices as quickly as possible. And, you know, it's taken us, in spite of that, it's taken us some time. But, you know, we've been working with the banks to, you know, to do that, to keep the cycle, the cash cycle going. Because once that dries up for artisans, it's very hard. We have one advantage over businesses that are set up in the cities. There's been a large departure of migrant labor from cities back to their homes. We are operating, many of our production centers are where some of the poorest in the country live. So in many of those places in rural districts, they have actually seen people come back, trained people come back from the city. So our next goal is to quickly try to ramp up the number of workers we have. And I mean, some colleagues have, you know, worked out some amazing designs. We're doing these face masks, you know, we're doing close to now 40,000 units a day. So the idea was to quickly ramp up and see ways in which we could generate employment, because there is a lot of people that need to be employed today. And today I would say to every entrepreneur in manufacturing or in any field, where try to employ as many people as you can, because that is the need of the hour.
You know, also, I know that you're very passionate, and I hear from people who are close to you, who work with you, that you're very passionate about people who work with you, your employees, your team. Tell us, you would have celebrated your anniversary this year.
Yes. I'm not 60 years old, but the company is 60 years old. The company is 60 years old. And, you know, I think when you look back and see how short-lived the lives of most companies are, I think there's something to celebrate in that.
Yeah. You know, I want to understand that through this pandemic, and of course it's a change across the world for retailers, for brands, how they will behave in the post-COVID world. What are some of the measures? What are some of the steps that you are taking? What are some of your learnings from this pandemic?
I think the nature of our world will be different even if a vaccine is discovered or a cure is discovered. And I'm hoping that one will be discovered. But even if it is discovered, the consumer is shifting. and has shifted. So it's like you go to the railway station after the train has pulled out. You've missed the train. So I say to people, try to go to the next station to catch the train. Because if you go to the old station, you'll have missed it. So, and I think the next station for retail is going to be that retail will profoundly shift. Some of it will shift onto e-commerce, and the marketplaces are very well positioned to take the benefit of that. I think there are going to be some very innovative platforms emerging. What Jio is doing with small Kirana stores is a very innovative attempt to build a collaboration. I think another will be to look at the idea of community-based retail. I think this is an early concept, but I think it's one where you create a community. And this works especially for retailers that have a philosophy and an ideology. Because if you have no philosophy and ideology, then it's very hard to create a community. Because these are people who come to you because they believe in your business philosophy and what you do and why you do it, rather than, it's a famous Simon Sinek line that's gone viral in this time. Everybody send me that link. It's like the why. Why do you do it? So I think if you are a business or a retailer that has a strong purpose behind your business, then I think you can create a community around that purpose. And those communities kind of become like the business, and its community becomes a way of sustaining itself for the future. These are radical concepts. I saw some really interesting in the last 2-3 months. I've seen some amazing websites, some amazing efforts of what people are doing. For example, in India, there's an organization called Rangde, and Rangde is doing some incredible work with artists. Yeah. There are so many organizations that are reaching out, to artisans to work on platforms. So I think that that's going to be one very positive outcome of this. If it can be said. Another thing will be that I think the customer of tomorrow, the post-COVID customer, is going to ask for a different kind of relationship to consumption. I think that a lot of people, I have met a lot of people who said, I was consuming so much, I was barely, aware of what I was doing. I was on a treadmill. The last 3 months, I've really decided to change my life. I think when millions of people, especially in the middle class, decide to change their lives, it is going to lead to a radically changed consumption landscape. And I think it's going to be important for entrepreneurs to understand where that's going.
Yeah. Yeah. William, you mentioned a very important point that amidst all brands, businesses that have purpose, that have clearly defined purpose, are going to be able to navigate, right? Like whatever comes their way. I want to understand, and I'm asking you because values are very important for you. What are some of the values that have embodied Fab India, and what are some of the values that you think will be crucial as Fab India navigates this time?
So you're going to, I think, get two types of businesses that emerge from this. One is going to be a business which treats products and services like a commodity. And that's where marketplaces and all will do really well. The other is going to be a businesses that are built around some kind of purpose. Now, it could be, like there's this really interesting company I came across called Heads Up for Tails, run by a couple who are amazing entrepreneurs. They're the kind of people you should be featuring. They're passionate about dogs, and all kinds of, but really, and I noticed that when you have that kind of a passion and you build a business around a passion, you create a community that actually supports you. So, the community goes out and supports you, and they have seen not the kind of drop in their business that other businesses have seen. And then, Shraddha, I looked at business after business. You look at the passion business, sales dropped 20, 30%. You look at the business that was just made to make money or to look after investor valuations, sales dropped 80%, 90%, 70%. So, the customer also, somewhere in their heart, they see that this is a business that's connected to purpose and therefore has value. Yeah. And this is a business that's just set up to, I remember a year and a half ago, I had some really brilliant guys come with a pitch deck, and they were really perfect. They had all the right, they've been to all the right business schools, they'd done all the right things, and I kept asking them what the passion and purpose of their business was, and they kept saying, we do a Series A, then a pre-Series A, then we do a Series B, then we raise this, and we do this, and we'd have a compulsory convertible and an optionally convertible, and we'll do this, and I realized that they had no interest in the business. They just thought they were just so excited about the idea of making money. And they all thought of themselves, and all these terms, these tools, all these boarding tools, you do different rounds, and you have convertibles of different kinds, and you have drag along, tag along, kick in, kick out, all these options. So they had drawn up, and it was perfect. I mean, it was an engineer's dream, the business. But at the end of it, it had no purpose.
Yeah.
And they were, and so I think that there is a time today when people who build something around passion and purpose, they're going to see that the customers respond to it differently.
Yeah. Fab India started in the 1960s, right? And your father started it. And what has been amazing, and I've told you this when we've met many a times, and I'm just one person, and there'll be millions who will agree with me when I say this, that, we all grew up, went to college, Fab India stayed with us, and today Fab India stays with us. There is something consistent, there is something purposeful, there is something Indian about Fab India, and that has not changed with time. Of course, I will tell you, which I tell you off the camera, that prices increase, but the consistency, the brand love, and the Indianness of Fab India has not changed. And how do you get to that year after year over so many years? How do you do that? How do you manage to do that?
I think that's where, having an ideal comes in. If you believe in something, you might not get it right. You might not even get to 100%. As Manish Sabharwal told me once, he said, "Don't let good ever be the enemy of great." And so if we get to good and we keep at it day after day, year after year, I mean, that's, something to take pride in, that you do your business, you do it well, you run an ethical company, try your best to work in a way that causes, positive outcomes to happen for people, for everybody. You don't always get it right. You make mistakes. Sometimes you fail in some things, but the important thing is to be aware of it. I mean, like this COVID has taught me that real value resides in the heart of people, both in the heart of your customer and in the heart of your employee. And if they sense a genuine belief, like some of our people have been through really difficult times.
Yeah.
Our customers, our employees, I mean, people have really, really seen a lot of suffering. I had a friend of mine recently who said, he called me from the airport and he was leaving, and he had said goodbye to his mother because he had to go to the US where his family was, and he had some pressing need. And his mother, he left her alone here. And he said, "I don't know when I'll see her. I don't know if I'll see her." The kind of personal tragedies people have had to go through because of this. And, as a business, I think it's at times like this that you must actually try to understand where people are in their hearts. And if you can reach out, like one of the things that we're going to try to do is build a new kind of retail model coming out of this, which is what I call the human needs platform. And I was telling somebody about it, and they said, "Oh, it's a marketplace." I said, "No, it's not a marketplace. It's a human needs platform. It's something that is going to really address very powerful human needs and create a community." And so that's my learning from this COVID. The business will have to move. It'll have to be different. And I think if we can pull that off, we've probably got another 20, 30 years ahead of us of, a good future. Yeah. But I'm also mindful of the fact that in today's day and age, businesses last for 5 years, 7 years. I see brands that were hot 3 years ago that have disappeared today. So it's a humbling experience to see that.
Yeah. But William, again, I'm saying on behalf of millions of Indians that Fab India remains in our hearts, and I'm just saying it very neutrally, not as, of course, offline I would be a fan person of Fab India, but online I would say very neutrally that Fab India has got it right. It is part of India and middle class India in so many ways. I want to pick up on what you said, human needs platform. I think with Organic India, which is again a step that you took with Fab India, I think you're catering to a very essential human needs with Organic India, because as an essential, I also got for my Kirana shop, they were storing Organic India. Tell me, how are you seeing the response to Organic India?
Well, I'll give you a really personal example of human needs. The first time I met you, Shraddha, you said to me, and I'll never forget, "I like your brand, but you don't have a loyalty program."
Yeah.
You don't look after loyal customers like me. You said that exact thing. Today, I mean, you were, I think, one of the main people who pushed us to get a loyalty program. Today, we have a loyalty program with close to 4 million members.
Wow.
So, I want to say that I don't know if you remember that conversation. You have so many conversations. You met me for the first time. You said, you need a loyalty program. You need to recognize people like me. You said those exact words to me. I can remember them. I think that to go back to human needs again, when we, Organic India was formed by a couple who actually came to India in search of spiritual, they came to India drawn by its spiritual tradition. And they came in and they lived here. And when I met them for the first time, I realized that this was a business built on a real passion and a true commitment. It wasn't just it was really built to help the farmers and to create a new kind of agriculture, to support the earth. And I think that was very attractive. At that time, I had to look up the word for organic. In Hindi, it's called Jaivik. And when I told people about it, the first thing everybody did was they raised their eyebrows and they were like, nobody in India. They said, people in India are going to buy value. They're going to buy value. They don't care about all these terms and all that. So this was about 15 years ago. And so 15 years ago, I heard this from a lot of people. And I think that, again, it's when you stick to what you believe in, it will eventually resonate in the world. I mean, today, everybody's been talking about organic and the move to organic, the health of the planet, and so I think that each of these things I think successful businesses are born out of a deep connection to purpose and passion. Yeah. And I think if you have those two things, and that's what I see, when you bring entrepreneurs onto your story, I often see you can hear the passion come across. And that's very exciting. And that's why I think people really like listening to the stories.
Yeah. I wanted to understand that, has this also, are there going to be significant changes that we are going to see in Fab India? When we go to the retail store, are there some new things, new processes that you've put in place in the stores?
So our first goal has been to make the retail experience as safe as possible. Both our employees who work in the stores and people who visit the stores. And I think that we have some amazing scientists, both in the company, both who work in Fab India and who work in Organic India, who really contributed to that process. I think the second thing will be to see what the landscape is going to be and to really listen to our consumers. So one of the things we are doing is we're upgrading our website into something called the Human Needs Platform. And that process, I think, will happen over the next 6 to 9 months. And as a member of our loyalty program, you'll be the first to find out about it. And I think it'll be interesting to get feedback from people who are members of what they like, what they don't like, what they think can be changed. And I do think that is true. I think that my advice to retailers is that human needs are not going to change. People still need to meet people. They still need to go to a movie theater. They will still need to go to a restaurant. That might not happen for the next 6 to 9 months. I mean, it will definitely happen. It's just that one will have to be patient. And in the meantime, think of new ways to reach your customers. I've seen some amazing things done by restaurant chains, I've seen some great initiatives. And that's what makes this period, that's what gives me hope for the future also.
Yeah. I also want to understand and bring this out, William, because there are a lot of layoffs happening, especially in the startup world, not especially in the startup world. I think it's cuts across all the different sectors, and that's a massive amount of layoffs, salary cuts that are happening. And I know how closely you think about people who work in your company and in your team. What are some of the things that you're doing? And I also think that you have some very interesting ESOP plan in place, right, in Fab India?
Yes, I think that sadly, across industry, I think if companies are half the size in sales, they will need fewer people. And I think many companies will emerge from this half the size, half their previous size. So, there is going to be that pain. And I think that maybe if you've got a few minutes, there are some solutions that, if there are a few changes in corporate law, they can help come up with some solutions to, to help entrepreneurs raise capital more easily and ramp up, bootstrap, scale up whatever businesses they have. Because if they can scale up the businesses, they will also generate a lot of employment.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we've been consistently proud about for the last 20, actually, I realize it's now 21 years old, is our ESOP plan. We've had it for 21 years. And, over the years, we've created about, close to 1,000 crores of an employee wealth. And that's something we're very proud about, because it's a program that began in 1999 and we've followed it. I think it's important at a time like this that businesses look at, helping their employees, in whatever way they can. And for us, especially for our management, we've had this ESOP plan. It's worked well. I think it's important to build the long-term connect and value, and it's shown in the sense that when people have made sacrifices, they've done it in a collaborative spirit with the company, knowing that the future of the company is very important. And as a stakeholder, when you have a stake in something, your vision of it changes. And this is what I always tell people in business, that, if someone is an employee, they have one relationship with you. The day you make them a shareholder, they have a very different relationship. Yes, they might ask some difficult questions. Yes, they might, which is fine. But if you, have a reasonably transparent and open business, they will think about the business very differently. They will think about the opportunities. They will think about how to cut costs. They will think about, and they will see their role very differently. They will see themselves as an owner. And that changes their whole contribution in a business. And I'm a great believer in it. And my only thing is, I hope governments make it easier for people to own ESOPs, because government policy can make it really easy or really difficult. And, this is one thing that I always feel, that if government policy makes it easier, then it'll lead to much more ownership among, people who helped build great companies.
But William, I have to congratulate you on that you did it like 21 years back. In startup world, ESOP is a big, big news, and it seems like a new thing. But it seems like a new thing driven by the tech companies, the tech young companies coming. But you've done that. In fact, India is phenomenal. So, yeah. I also wanted to ask you about the alternative corporate models that today entrepreneurs can adopt, because it is tough time and money is not easily available. What are some of the things that you think that can be done, and what are some of the opportunities?
So, Shraddha, it's interesting that people keep using the example of Europe with India. And I don't think that's correct, because in Europe, in many European countries and in America, there have been assistance given to businesses. Their payrolls have been taken care of, payrolls have been paid for businesses and all that. And I always, when typically entrepreneurs get together, they say, oh, why can't we have the German model or the French model or the American model and I always say, look, the first priority here is to look after those who need the most help. So I think what the government has done with the government's funds have been really a very powerful safety net they have put in. And that safety net will help the poorest of the poor. And that is the role of government. I said, as entrepreneurs, our role is to, look for other places of capital. Don't go to government looking for capital. Okay, if they can help you out with some better terms with the RBI, instructing banks to lend more liberally, that's one thing. But you must, look at other models to raise capital. And here, I think a small change in government policy can lead to a big change in the landscape for corporates in India, especially medium and large, small, medium and large corporates, because there is a tremendous amount of money available globally, and that money now really wants to come to India because it sees India as a safe, secure partner. I mean, both for European companies and for American companies. And the perception of India is that it is going to be, a really good long-term bet. But I think if there are some changes, some changes to the rules, can I digress for 2 minutes?
Yes, please.
But let me give you, so the Brits invented the limited liability company. And it was a great invention because it basically protected the shareholders' assets. If the company failed, the creditors could only come to the company's assets, not the shareholders' assets. Since then, as big as that invention, the invention of the company, there have been two equally important inventions. And if those inventions are brought into Indian company law, I think $2 to $3 trillion would flow to Indian businesses in the next year or two. And that will be far more assistance than any government can ever make. And it'll also create a massive employment opportunity, because entrepreneurs will do what entrepreneurs do best, which is to create jobs, create opportunities. They will go out there and they will do that, and they will provide massive employment. And the two changes are really, I'm a great believer in differential voting rights shares. If you notice, most of the companies in the US today, especially in tech, but in almost any field, have two classes of shares. Now, I've been a great believer that the best entrepreneurs in the world come from India. Like the best dates come from the Middle East, the best entrepreneurs come from India. And I think if those entrepreneurs can get capital, you look at what Sachin and Binny Bansal built, you look at what Kunal Bahl built, you look at what they were great entrepreneurs. They are great entrepreneurs, but they weren't able to raise unlimited amounts of capital. And one of these entrepreneurs, who's a friend of yours and a friend of mine, told me, he said, we go to battle as entrepreneurs with bows and arrows. They come to us with howitzers. And so he says, we can be a very good marksman and we can shoot bows and arrows, but they will come. And he was referring to capital, because today a lot of companies with differential voting rights shares have access to unlimited capital. And the thing is, every time an entrepreneur in India has to raise capital through bringing in investors, they get diluted. So eventually you start off by owning 80% of the company, you end up by owning 6% of the company, at which point you're really spending all your time looking after investors. And then there are a lot of entrepreneurs like me who said, look, I want to be in charge of my destiny. I don't want to, so then I won't raise capital. So then I will stay small, even though I know I can employ 600,000 people, but I won't raise that capital because I don't want to be diluted to 6 or 8%. And if I'm diluted to 6 or 8%, I'll spend all my time answering investor questions and doing that. That's the second invent. I think if corporate law, there is already the concept recognized, and there's been an excellent paper written by SEBI on this subject, and this concept is already recognized. But I think if the government can really focus on this will be one. Then the third great innovation in company law is something called the protected cell or the protected series company. And this is something in which shareholders and investors, entrepreneurs and investors, can own shares of a company, share in the liability, but the investors have a lot of freedom to leave the company when they want to. So they are not bound into the normal corporate structure. So my sense is that let us make it as easy, because we have the raw material that no other country has, which is amazing entrepreneurs. I have seen on the level, and this, Shraddha, better than anybody else. I mean, if I know 100 entrepreneurs, 1,000. And you've seen the magic that they create every day, the way they employ, the way they convert capital, create jobs, create opportunities. So my sense is that if you make these changes and capital flows in, the thing about capital is that there's tons of it in the world today, because most of the Western governments have opened the liquidity tabs. And so basically they're printing money, and there's lots and lots of money available to come into India to create jobs and opportunities. So
yeah, very valid point, William. And if I look at the world context right now, and if I may say so, right now with the China-US trade war, and now it gets even more accentuated. Like Manish Sabharwal, you were quoting here in Money Matters, he said that India, for whatever one may agree or disagree, but everyone will have to agree that India remains the biggest frontier, the last frontier of the largest consumer base in the world. And investors will have to look at India. And what you are saying is that if we have these changes, tweaks done in our corporate law, then it becomes like the growing ground. It's not like investors have to look at it, but if you also thrive in India and make money in India. Yeah, yeah.
yes.
William, I also wanted to ask you in terms of, and this is for everyone's benefit and for mine as an entrepreneur, I also want to understand, because I think it's easy for us to look at Fab India and say, oh, wow, Fab India is standing, Fab India is growing, Fab India is doing very well. But, when you start in 1960s and to now, consistently being there and doing the right thing. I want to understand, get inside your brain and understand, how do you take decisions? How have you processed decisions? How have you chosen to do one thing vis-a-vis the 4 5 different interesting options that would come your way? How have you been able to consistently perform, if I may say so?
I think consistent performance is a result of three things. I mean, one is, if you want to consistently deliver results, you need to get sort of three really big things right. One is, you really need to have a purpose to your business. You need to have a passion and a purpose to your business. The second thing you need to get right is you need to constantly look at the long term. I remember Nandan once gave me advice. He said, keep, one eye on the short and midterm, but keep your main focus on the long term. And it was, I think, one of the best pieces of advice I got. And, because he says, as a business, if you have understood the long term and you focused on the long term, your quality of decision making will change. And I can tell you that as soon as you're focused on the long term, the quality of your decision making changes. And the third part of it is, you have to have rigorous systems, and you have to have rigorous systems that build trust, because trust is the one thing that, if I'm to criticize entrepreneurs, and I know this is not a show to criticize entrepreneurs, is they tend to take a lot of shortcuts. And I think you're smiling, so you have some experience of this as well. But they tend to take a lot of shortcuts. And trust is one thing that, my grandfather told me this. He says, trust is something that takes a century to build and an hour to destroy. And I think that if you can get these three things, purpose, passion, the constant focus on the long term, and that is the 10-year span or the 5-year span. And the third thing is to, build trust in everything you do. Now, one of the things I think it's very hard for entrepreneurs, especially when you take investor money, is that there's a relentless focus on the short term. Yeah. So you have to sometimes just close your ears to that noise all the time, especially if companies are listed. Because if companies are listed, there's a quarter-on-quarter cycle. And you really have to shut your ears to that and say, listen, I am going to shut my ears and look at the long term. I know I have to speak to analysts. I know I have to give them all this gyan and do all this, but keep that eye focused on the long term. This is something that I've really learned.
Yeah. And William, on behalf of all the entrepreneurs who are in the handicraft, who are in, working with rural artisans, who are building marketplaces, opportunities and brands in this space, because they all look up to you, and they all look up to Fab India. What would be your advice? And do you see that India can have interesting brands in rural handicraft, rural in apparels, because we've not seen many homegrown brands, vertical brands. Do you see that as an opportunity, and what would be your advice to them?
So I think that my advice to them would be to pick an area of specialization where you really know it well. I'll give you some, there are some fantastic brands that have really, like, there's a brand that does amazing work with indigo. There's another brand that does amazing work with fusion garments. So pick your niche and play in it.
Last, before I let you go, and I know you are a man who reads a lot, does meditation, yoga, and he's always in a good mood. You're a happy guy. But this has been a tough last 2 months for everyone across the world, for all of us, and especially, I would say, for entrepreneurs. Like, of course, I shouldn't say especially, but we look at entrepreneurs, so we've been very closely interacting with them, and it has been tough. I want to ask if I can take something from your book, from your last 2 months. What have you done to be in a good mental shape? Because your stores have been shut across the country. What have you done to keep the mojo going? And if we could look at and learn on some of the things that you've done, from some of the things that you've done.
I think this is the time to spend with your families, and this is the time to connect with the people you care about. I think that, every day I try to spend an hour and a half or two calling people I really care about and just checking in with them. A lot of my friends are alone right now for various reasons. And so, I think that's very important to do. just hearing their voices, connecting with them. I think as an entrepreneur, I think it's important to use this period to self-reflect. So every day I try to take 2 or 3 hours out to think about what the future is going to look like, and how to just think broadly and step back, because when you go into something, you lose the perspective. So you step back, you walk back, and then you get a better view, and then you go back in. I think that's very important. My best friend, other than my family, has been my love of reading, and I'm reading a great book. It's right here on my desk. I think it's a fantastic book.
Oh, from Gutenberg to Google.
I'm rereading it because and I realize that I learn a lot from my kids right now. I mean, they're teaching me about how to be a digital native, which I'm not. So it's a time. We should treat this time as a gift, Shraddha.
Yeah, very, very, very priceless advice, I would say, William. I said that was the last question, but one before we go. Retail, future of retail. What would define the future of retail in our country, if I may say so?
I think the stand for something, specialize in something, and then spend half your time thinking about how you can make your customers' lives better.
Yeah. Thank you so much, William, for taking out time. We had mentioned it, and there are a lot of retail entrepreneurs who are here, who are watching this as you speak, and this has been very valuable. And I also want to ask on behalf of all the entrepreneurs that if people want to reach out to you, and if there are specifically questions that they want to send to you, is there someone in your office that they can reach out to?
Yes. Do you want to put that? Do you want to put that email out in your network, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah. If you have an email, then I would love to put it out. Thank you so much to all participants and to everyone who will watch the video. We'll put it in the video, but this is helpful. Thank you so much, William, for taking out time. I know how busy you are, but thanks for talking to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Shraddha. Take care. Stay safe.